To ask you was about your Bronze Star. Can you tell me again what you remember about your Bronze Star? How did the day start?
uh, you know, my file doesn't have any mention of what action that Bronze Star was awarded or the Silver Star. I have a Silver Star, but I think I have the Silver Star because of removal of roadblock in Germany,
Yeah.
and we were under direct fire. I lost 2 men from my unit that were not involved in the actual roadblock removal, but they were in the line of fire apparently.
Yeah. Well, what I do read, I have another laptop next to me standing, so that's why I'm looking to the right sometimes because I have some more information. Um, they stated about you. They stated at first the lieutenant in the 17th Armored Engineer Battalion of the 2nd Armored Division, Mr. Turner, led his platoon as they get under direct fire, remove roadblocks in the vicinity of the Hermann Göring Steelworks at Brunswick early in April. The operation took about a day, and it was where Turner and his men had the heaviest losses of the war. 2 men killed and 2 men wounded.
Yeah, that was that roadblock.
Yeah. And from our research, we are quite sure that one of your engineers who got killed was Private First Class Albert Clark.
Albert Clark
Yeah,
and Sergeant. No, he wasn't a sergeant then. He gotten busted. Davison.
Davidson.
Davison.
Okay, that's very wonderful because we only had one name from the unit history we have about the 7th engineers, and we were looking for the second name of that day, and you helped us by giving us the information about Davidson, and he was a private first class, or was he an NCO or a CO? Do you remember?
He had been a platoon sergeant until he screwed up somehow or another.
Okay.
I don't remember now. And he got broken to a private.
Well, he must have done something very wrong there, I guess.
I think he did. It didn't set well with Captain Hazen, I know.
Okay, and yeah, you really don't recall much about the day you get on a direct fire in Germany at the Hermann Göring Steel factory. You don't recall about what happened on that day, or
Well, the road was blocked. In other words, the enemy, the Germans had fallen some trees across the road.
yeah,
And I moved up with a squad, one squad, and I think the sergeant's name was Fowler, Sergeant Fowler. And he and I and his squad, with the help of I don't know, it was a tank retriever,
okay.
a tank mounted with a crane and that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. And that tank was up there to help us remove the roadblock.
Okay, it's a recovery tank recovery vehicle, maybe from second maintenance squadron. If you
Yeah, it would have to been with the second battalion of the 66th Armored Regiment.
oh, okay, wonderful, wonderful. So your memory is perfect if you even recall the 66th and the regiment.
Yeah, well, most of the way, through France and into Belgium and then into Germany, A Company was assigned to assist the second battalion of the 66th Armored Regiment,
Yeah.
and or I guess A Company supported the regiment, the whole 66th, and my platoon was with the second battalion of the 66th.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's nice information. And yeah, we managed. You called a name, the first squad, and the squad leader was named Fowler.
Yeah.
Do I spell it right when I say it's Fauler?
No, it would be Fawler or something like that. Fowler, Fou. And a different spelling there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Then at least I know something to search on. And well, I told Susan already. I made a roll of honor on the website. I'm still busy with. And from our research, we know there were 60 men of the 17th Engineer Battalion were killed in total during World War II. And the second thing is, from the 61 names we have, only 45 names we know about the 61 men who got killed. So we are still searching for at least 11 names, and from 5 names we do know on which day they died or were killed in action, but we don't know the name. So that's why we are looking for some additional information about names. Maybe we can give the fallen engineers their name back. They are sometimes unknown because they were not buried in a military grave. They were buried in the States again. And
yeah, I think that Albert Clark, if I remember correctly, Albert Clark is buried in Margarten.
yeah, yeah, we have. I have on my website, which probably you got already from Susan. On the Roll of Honor, I managed to make a page about Albert F. Clark, even with a photo of him.
Yeah, I tried to find out more about Davison, but I couldn't find anything.
No, no. Well, that wasn't a problem. The next thing I wanted to discuss with you was the Bronze Star you received, and the citation of the Bronze Star says about your action. On the night of 21st of November 1944, Lieutenant Turner led a minesweeping party from Pfaffendorf, Germany, along the main road toward Freialdhoven, Germany, the latter town being immediate objective for the advance scheduled for the following morning. Lieutenant Turner's mission was to clear a gap to and over a tank ditch in order that the tanks could deploy over flat ground to attack the town. He completed his mission despite the fact of enemy patrols were active in the area. After daylight the morning of 22nd November 1944, it was found that additional gaps would be required. Lieutenant Turner and one mine detector operator cleared the additional gaps in full view of the enemy. This work and accomplishment directed by Lieutenant Turner reflected high credit upon himself and upon the military service. That was what was named at your Bronze Star.
I think if that's the right activity that I'm thinking of too in Germany, we went out and with a squad and mine detectors, and we swept the roadway, and we found a lot of those Teller mines, and we pulled them off of the road, out of the roadway, but we pulled them off to the side. Then when I got back to the command tank, I discovered that instead of going down that road, we were going to go across it. So the mines were still in our way.
Yeah.
So Sergeant Fowler and I, we went back out there where those mines were located on that road and picked them up and carried them over to an anti-tank ditch that the Germans had dug, a big wide ditch,
Yeah.
and discarded them in that ditch because I knew the tanks weren't going to go into that ditch.
Yeah.
So we cleared the mines off of that road then, and we got back. That and well, it was just becoming daylight, as I remember,
Yeah.
and reported to the commanding officer that the mines were had been removed out of our path and that we could go.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, I have also contact with some relatives of 17th engineers. And
Yeah.
and maybe some of the names, maybe you do recall some names. So I wanted to say some names to you, and maybe you can tell me if you do know the names of the engineers. One of them was David Ed Hyatt, and he was an half-tech driver of company D. It must have been.
What was how did you spell that last name?
It's Hiett.
You know what? I had a little notebook that had the names of all the men in that platoon that I led. And I took it to one of our reunions, and when I came home, I didn't have it. I lost it.
Oh, that's bad news.
And I lost all the names of the men that were in my platoon, every one of them.
Oh,
I had it at one time, but I don't have it now.
no.
And I think I do know that Sergeant Fowler was one of the squad leaders.
Yeah. Oh, and
I think at that time that my platoon sergeant's name was Nichols, Sergeant Nichols.
okay.
And he used to be he was the mess sergeant for A Company. And when we got into Germany, he decided he had enough of the mess kit as a kitchen, and he wanted to get with a platoon, so Captain Hazen assigned Sergeant Nichols to my platoon, and he was the boy that assisted me a whole lot. He was good. He was really a good sergeant.
And that's kind of special because he was just at first he was a kitchen man, one of the men in the mess. So
Yeah, but he did real well as a platoon sergeant.
yeah, wonderful.
He later, when we went into Berlin, Sergeant Nichols was promoted to first sergeant for the company. He was our first sergeant.
Okay.
And I've lost track of him since. I haven't seen him.
No. Well, maybe we can track him if he's still alive.
He should be. He wasn't any older than I am. Now, and I'm 98.
Yeah, so maybe he is 96 and still living. Who knows? Who knows? Francis, one of the names you also mentioned that was the name of a man named Bonetibus. Do you recall? He was he should be your driver.
But well, my driver's name, I don't recall it now, but I do know, I think he was from Oklahoma. That was his home. Yeah, he and I went through a whole lot of things.
Yeah? Good things and bad things, probably.
He was a good driver.
Yeah. And but the name Bonetibus doesn't ring a bell.
You want to say it again?
His name was Bonetibus. It is Bonabitus. Bonetibus.
I don't know whether I can help you there. I don't.
Yeah.
And I really have forgotten what his name was.
Yeah, but maybe you recall in when you have the time and when you are maybe at the golf ball field, maybe you do recall.
Well, at the last reunion of the 2nd Armored Division, that was in Fort Benning, Georgia,
Yep.
last September. I was the only one from the Engineer Battalion there.
Okay.
And there are a few guys there, a couple of guys from the 66, but most of them were from other units.
Yeah. So you were the only
So
engineer.
kind of thin.
No, but you still knew some other veterans. They when they did arrive at the reunion. Did you remember some veterans at the reunion?
At the reunion?
Yeah.
There really wasn't very much that we could talk about.
No.
We were the only ones. I was the only one from the engineers.
Yeah.
And most of them had been either in the 14th Field Artillery or the 67th Armored Regiment.
Yeah.
Didn't see very many guys from. I haven't seen any of the people that I worked with during World War II.
No. That. But when did you go to the first reunions of maybe of the engineers? Was that in the 80s or in the 70s or?
We used, A Company used to have their own reunion.
Okay.
And we had reunions in Syracuse, New York, and we went to Hartford, Connecticut, and Nashville, Tennessee. I think the last one that the engineer company had was in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
And then there was only about 4 or 5 guys there then. And then at that reunion, why we decided to stop holding A Company reunions and join the 2nd Armored Division reunion. So we went, from then on, we've been going to the Armored Division reunions.
Yeah, because there was not nearly any engineers left for the reunion.
There were none.
There were none. Okay. Francis, I wrote a piece about yourself, about your youth in the, let me see on the website. You started your military career at Pittsburgh Recruiting Station.
That's where we were sworn in. We raised our right hand and solemnly pledged to defend the United States of America against all their enemies, foreign and domestic. We went from there from the recruiting station in Pittsburgh by train to Harrisburg and then to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And in Washington, D.C., I was met, there were about 10 of us in that group that went to Fort Belvoir.
Yeah.
And one of them, of course, that went was a high school classmate of mine named Clarence Winton.
Yeah.
Clarence has passed away quite a few years ago. But he and I went to the same unit. We were assigned to different platoons in the company, in the 31st Engineer Company,
Yeah.
separate. Clarence went to the motor pool and started driving dump trucks. And I went to one of the other platoons and learned to tie knots.
Yeah. Susan had told me about the tying the knots, but also she told me, and I put it on the website, that Mr. Winton had some trouble to keep his posture during the officer candidate school. You mean that posture thing? Yeah, I mean, you had to be.
When I enlisted in the Army in 1941, I think it was, we took our physical examinations with a reserve doctor in Oil City. And it was there that I discovered that Clarence Winton was also joining the Army. So we went, the doctor told us that for 2 boys from the farm, we were the poorest specimens he'd ever seen. But he passed us anyway. And we went from there to Pittsburgh, and we were sworn in at the recruiting station in Pittsburgh. And then they put us on a train from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C., and we were met there by a sergeant from the 31st Engineers at the train station, and they busted us out to the Fort Belvoir. And we took our basic training with that company at Fort Belvoir.
Yeah.
It was the 31st Engineer Company.
Yeah, I have a beautiful picture of you in July 1st, 1941, with the 31st Engineer Company, and I also found out that must have been the first day that it was assigned, the 31st, because the 1st of July 1941. The 31st Engineer Company was just erected. That was the first day. And Susan gave me one of the photographs of the Officers Candidate School.
Yeah, when we went to, when I joined the 31st in Fort Belvoir, that company was doing test work for the engineer board, and the engineer board was the research unit of the Corps of Engineers at Fort Belvoir that was developing engineer practices for the Army.
Okay.
And it was also the 31st Engineers was furnished demonstration troops. We did all kinds of demonstrations, like for the reserve officers that were being recalled to active duty.
Yes.
They would be coming there. There'd be a couple hundred reserve officers in a class, and they were doing their basic training all over again, and we did the demonstration work. Like there was a timber trestle bridge across the gully there in Fort Belvoir.
Yeah.
And I guess I can say that it was pre-cut. Everything was all laid out according to size and length and so forth. And we'd go out there, we'd build that bridge, and we knew how to put the trestle together, put the bridge together. Then we would do that, build the bridge, and then when the reserve officer class left, we'd go back and tear the bridge down. And stack the pieces. Then the reserve officer would come out the next day, and they'd build a bridge. When they got it built, why, we had to go back out there then and tear that bridge down and pile it up for the next class.
Okay, wonderful. So at the third or fourth time, you could dream about building the bridge, I suppose.
Yeah, it was a cinch then, you know. We knew where every piece went, and we could build that bridge in an hour.
Yeah, that must have been something special for the latest classes you got, because they saw you assembling that bridge in a very fast time, I suppose.
Yeah. Then of course there was the pontoon bridges too.
Yeah.
We would go out and at that time the pontoons for the floating bridge were aluminum boats.
Yeah.
And we built the bridge across the boats.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And a bridge truck with a semi-trailer. It had two boats on it, and it had all what they call the chest, which is the flooring, and the box, which was the stringers and things, all on one trailer. And that one trailer represented about 20 feet of bridge.
Yes, yes, we know. We have pictures of these trailers.
Uh-huh. And then we do the floating bridge too.
Okay, also, again.
Yeah.
So you made pontoon bridges, and you made the
Timber
threshold
trestle.
bridge. Yeah.
Timber trestle. Yeah, well, we take the reserve officers out to the firing range, and they would fire the course of with a Springfield rifle,
Yeah.
and of course we'd take care of the putting the targets up and taking them down and all that crap.
Yeah.
And I learned how to tie a whole lot of knots.
Yeah.
So my classification was rigger. I was able to tell the reserve officers that were being recalled how to rig a gin pole,
Oh, wonderful.
among other things.
So that was kind of special for you, because you were already a second lieutenant at that moment. You were
No.
no.
I was private first class or corporal
Oh, okay,
at the time.
okay.
And then I went to the Sergeant Sweeney and I applied for the officer candidate school at the same time, and we were accepted and went to that same officer candidate school that we were doing the demonstrations for.
Oh, okay, okay. So at first you gave the demonstrations to the 31st Engineer Company, and later on you joined yourself the officers candidate school at the.
Became an officer candidate and went through the school myself.
Yeah, okay, now I understand. So I have to rewrite the page I made about you on the website. I have some new information, so I have to change it. And one of the things, I'm sorry, you just named a name, and it cost. Was it the man you joined the candidate school? Was that Sweeney? You called me a name, Sweeney, or
Sergeant Sweeney was our platoon sergeant, and he and I and Clarence Winton became candidates in the officer candidate school in the same class.
Okay. Could you spell the name from Sweeney? And could you spell the name Sweeney for me?
Can I what?
Can you spell the name of?
Oh yeah, Sweeney.
Okay, thank you. That's for me. When I put it on online, I have to put in the right name.
Yeah. I've forgotten what Sergeant Sweeney's first name was, but I know when I was in the 31st, he was Sergeant Sweeney. That was all I had to know.
Okay. Francis told me you told her that Clarence Winton could not take the constant harangue and the demeaning verbal abuse of the officer candidate school sergeant. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, the officers in charge of the officer candidate school, they did their best to break you down.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what they were doing. If you didn't if you didn't stand there and take a gaff, then you weren't going to be able to be a lieutenant in the army and be a leader.
No.
You had to be, you had to take the gaff in order to become an officer, I guess is what you. And they did their best to get you to break down.
Do you remember how they tried to break you down? Do you recall how that went?
Well, I never forgot one thing about this second lieutenant that caught me on inspection day. I looked down and my boots had a little dust on them, so I wiped my shoes against the back of my legs to take the dust off of them, and he saw me, and he came right up to me and right to my face, you know. Read the riot act, and the one thing he had to do was to be able to stand there and take it without firing back, you know.
Yeah, you have to you can't say anything back.
You don't say anything back, or you get a little more.
Yeah.
And I guess Tommy Clarence went and couldn't take that kind of stuff. But I let him chew me out,
Yeah.
and I didn't react.
And did they ever got physical, or was it only verbally?
Yeah.
Francis, do you remember if it was only verbally harassment, or did they get physical sometimes?
Mostly verbal.
Mostly verbal, but sometimes also
But I
physically.
could think of a whole lot of things to say when they were chewing you out.
Yeah, yeah. Francis, then you went to Camp Atterbury, Indiana, and you were assigned to the 381st Construction Battalion at Camp Atterbury, and with 4 other newly graduated officers.
4 second lieutenants fresh out of school.
Yeah, yeah.
They assigned us to the post engineer's office at Atterbury. And at that time, they were clearing a part of the post, I guess, for a firing range, and we were sort of overseeing the crews as they tore down buildings and did that kind of work.
Okay.
But they didn't know what to do with us, so they sent us home. I had a 30-day leave home,
Okay.
which I took.
Yes.
And then when I got back to Fort Atterbury, orders were awaiting me to go to Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Yep.
And I went down to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and we were assigned to the 382nd, I think it was,
Yes.
Engineer Battalion. We met the battalion commander there, Colonel Jones, I think his name was. And we were attached to another newly formed engineer battalion of the same kind, and all of the soldiers in that unit were black,
Yeah.
colored boys,
Yeah.
and they had their problems. And after a couple of weeks in that engineer battalion, I asked the colonel for a transfer to a combat engineer unit.
Yeah.
So they put me on a train from Fort Knox to Fort Bragg.
Okay. And
And that's, I joined the 17th Engineers of the 2nd Armored Division and the 17th Engineers at Fort Bragg.
okay. So yeah.
And commanding officer at that time was a real nice guy by the name of Colonel Hurley. Lieutenant Colonel Hurley. And the company commander of the company I was assigned to was D Company. Was Captain George Youngblood.
I know that name. It sounds familiar for me.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Captain Youngblood commanded that company throughout the war. And when the war was over, I'm not sure what happened to him because he was in D Company and I was in D Company when we went over to North Africa in 1942.
Okay. I can look up for you what Lieutenant Hurley, at first Lieutenant Colonel Hurley, Henry Hurley, he was called, and he died on July 14th, 1943.
43?
Yeah. And
he got killed in the service?
yeah, he got killed in the service, and he got killed.
Oh, that's right, he did. You're right. He was killed in Sicily. His Jeep ran over a mine and he was killed.
Yeah. From our research, I quote Lieutenant Colonel Hurley, his driver and his two officers from outside the battalion were in a peep out on reconnaissance for water point site near Butera at Sicily, Italy, on the 14th of July when the vehicle entered a minefield and his entire party was killed by exploding mines. And he's buried.
That's correct.
Yeah, and he's buried at the Arlington Cemetery at the moment.
At the moment,
Yeah, maybe he had. He was buried at first in Normandy and later on got back. That's what we see a lot.
He wouldn't have been buried in Normandy. We weren't there yet. He was in Sicily.
Yeah, it was in Sicily, so he must be buried there. You're right, of course.
Yeah, he could have been buried in Sicily.
Yeah, you're right.
But now you say he's buried in Arlington.
Yeah, that's where his grave is. I could send you a link later on at via Susan or by Facebook if you like. Then you can see his grave. And you also told me about George Youngblood. That was your company commander from D Company, isn't it?
Yeah, George Youngblood was in D Company.
Yeah, and George survived the war and he died in 1998. And his burial is at Live Oak Memorial Gardens in Charleston, South Carolina.
South Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a Southern gentleman.
Yeah, you were very fond of him. I recall from what Susan told me. You were very fond of.
Yeah, I liked Captain Youngblood. He was real good. He was one of those Southern gentlemen.
Yeah.
And a real nice guy. I was in D Company from when we went to North Africa and to Tidworth Barracks In fact, Youngblood and Smith and I think, shared a room at Tidworth Barracks in England.
Yeah.
Then I had some extracurricular activities I got involved in, like a PX officer, mess officer. I was in, when we left Tidworth Barracks in 1944, I was in charge of the officers' mess at Tidworth Barracks.
Okay. Okay.
So they transferred me from D Company then to Headquarters Company. And I was in Headquarters Company when we went to Normandy.
Okay. I didn't know that. I thought you stayed in Company D, but were you back then a S2 intelligence officer at that moment?
When I got made mess officer, I was transferred from D Company to Headquarters.
Yeah.
So when we landed in that, went to Normandy, I was a recon officer for the battalion. And Captain McMahon, who was the company commander of A Company, got killed in Normandy. And Lieutenant Christie got killed in Normandy. So I was transferred from Headquarters Company then to A Company.
Okay. Now I understand.
That's how I got into A Company.
Okay, now I understand. So you came from D, you get back to HQ Headquarters Company, and then you were, after McHannon was killed and Christie was killed, you got to A Company.
Yeah.
And you were
correct.
You were when you were at HQ, you were at that time you was a reconnaissance officer.
Reconnaissance officer.
Okay.
And a recon unit in Headquarters Company was a lieutenant and a driver and a radio operator, all in one Jeep.
Okay. Okay.
So I made a few reconnaissance trips for the battalion. Yeah, I guess you could say that. I went up to Carentan on one trip, and I went over to the British zone over at Bayo, I think it was. I picked up a mine that they had discovered on the beach that was different than what we were accustomed to in Africa. It was called an R mine, and it was about 2.5 feet long and maybe 6 inches square. Had fuses on both ends. So we needed to find out how that thing worked before we went very far. So that the ones that the British had picked up, we used to study how the thing was to put together and how we would remove it from a minefield if we had to remove it.
So
the teller mine was easy. That one was a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. Because it was the first time you ever saw that R mine, or it's called a regal mine also, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I expect that's right.
Yeah, it's a regal. Francis, I wanted, you mentioned a name at who was killed at Normandy. You named a name by, his name was Christie, Lieutenant Christie. Is that correct?
Yeah, Christie.
Christie. It's spelled C-H...
CHRSTE, I think, or EY.
Yeah, okay. And that was and he got killed at the same time with McMahon.
McMahon.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think Cecil McMahon spelled his name
Yep.
capital MACHAON.
Okay. Yeah, because I have him on my roll of honor. Let's see. I have to. I'm looking at my laptop at the same time. Captain Cecil E. Buddy McMahon.
McMahon.
Yeah,
McMahon is how he said it.
Yeah. Okay.
It looks like McMahon, but he pronounced it McMahon.
McMahon. Okay. Francis, I have some information about him. McMahon was killed on July 27, 1944 at Le Mesnil-Herman in Normandy. And what we know about him, that he was killed along with Corporal Randolph C. Jenney and 4 other soldiers of Company A in a heavy artillery barrage.
Oh, okay. I didn't really know what it was. At that time, I was as a recon officer in the headquarters company.
Yeah.
Then when I went to A company, after Normandy, it was after we broke out at St. Lo, that I think I was assigned to A company. And I believe Gretzel Hazen was the company commander.
Hayes, it's also a name I know. I've heard it before. It's spelled H-A-Y-S.
Hazen, I think it is.
Okay.
Hazen. Yeah, he sent me up to Combat Command A headquarters as his liaison officer.
Yes.
So I would get the orders of the day from Combat Command A. Then I'd go find Captain Hazen and tell him what was in it and give him the orders. And then I'd go back to the Combat Command trains and bed down for the night.
Yeah.
Then we'd be on our way the first thing in the morning for the next objective.
Okay. Was that a dangerous position you had at that time as a liaison officer? Was it dangerous?
Yeah. I was a liaison officer, and I rode with Combat Command A headquarters.
Yeah.
And what I had to ride in was an amphibious jeep.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. We also call it a seep. It was it's looking
like a boat.
Like a boat, and then at the same time it is a jeep.
At the same time as a jeep. And I always had to make sure that I was ahead of some of the other recon officers that was in that group. So if I ran aground in that jeep, they could push me through.
Okay. Well, what I also wanted to ask you, let's get back in time a little. You were at Tedworth Barracks, and then you said you were. We talked about Normandy, But first you went to North Africa.
First we went to North Africa with D Company.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you recall about Africa? How did you went there, and what were your first missions? Do you recall?
Uh, uh, when we went to North Africa, uh, my platoon was assigned to this one ship, the AKA 21. We were the only soldiers aboard that ship, and our job was to unload it when we got to Africa.
Yeah.
It had some 108 vehicles aboard. And out of that, 31 of those vehicles were light tanks. What the heck they call that dang thing?
They call the M5 Stewart tanks.
It had a name.
It's called a Stewart, isn't it?
Stewart. They were all Stewart tanks.
Yeah.
And at Fort Bragg, when I first got there in September, we were preparing for that combat load out of Fort Bragg. And so they'd load the tanks on, they waterproofed the tanks, and then they loaded them on flat cars, and they took them from Fort Bragg to Newport, Virginia, which is Norfolk.
Yeah.
And they put them on a ship, and they go out in the Chesapeake Bay and unload them over the side, and they'd go ashore in their boats, you know, doing our practice for the landing in Africa. Then they'd load them all up and put them on a train and back to Fort Bragg. We made 3 trips.
So.
The third trip, when we got to the pier at Norfolk, or Newport News, the warehouse was full of ammunition, and when the train pulled onto the dock, the gate across the pier closed, and nobody got off the dock again unless you went by ship. That's when we boarded the ship and went out into the Chesapeake Bay, and from there we ended up in North Africa.
And you arrived at the port of Oran, is that correct? In the harbor at North Africa that was called Oran, or?
We landed all the way from Casablanca to Port-au-Pools.
Okay.
And the destination of my ship was Port-au-Pools.
Okay. Yeah, because it isn't. There is not so many known about the African campaign. We have a unit history of the 70th Engineers. It's online on my website. I showed it Susan, but we don't have so much information about the landing at North Africa.
Yeah, sure. We were offshore. We were in sight of the shore. Actually, you could see it on November the 8th, in 1942.
Yeah.
And I unloaded all those vehicles, and into they were unloaded into boats that went ashore.
Yes, because yep, I do have some information about let's see, Lieutenant Lloyd, Lieutenant Ballard, Lieutenant Whiting, and Lieutenant Crimmins.
Yeah, they were an A company.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were at D company at that moment.
I was in D company. It was In D Company, it was let's see, Grady L. Smith was one of the officers,
Yeah.
and another one was named Lockery. I don't recall all his details.
No.
And they went to, when we went from Africa, we were stationed in the Cork Forest. Well, I guess it would be a little east of Rabat.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
And we spent the winter there in that area in the cork forest. Peel the cork off of the trees and use it to keep our tents warm. Oh, then and the natives didn't like us using that bark that way. You know, the bark on those cork trees would be a couple of inches thick, and it would come off in sheets. So it was easy to set it afire because it was cork.
yeah. So it burned well.
It burned well. I think we went from there by convoy from Rabat to Mestaganem in Algiers.
Yes. And Francis, I'm looking to the right sometimes because I have another laptop with information I wanted to ask you. So when you don't see me looking at you, I'm still hearing you, but I'm looking up information at the same time.
You're recording it, I take it.
Yeah, I'm also recording it, and I'm looking at another laptop that's standing next to me with information and some questions I like to ask you. And one of the questions is also that on the unit history, it is noted that Lieutenant Turner's Company D platoon, his ship was torpedoed. They turned back and landed a few days later at Casablanca. Do you know? Do you recall about the torpedoed ship?
Oh, yeah. We were still off of Port-au-Pools, and we were unloading. We had already unloaded all the vehicles. They'd gone ashore, and then they'd brought a little coastal steamer out from Port-au-Pools, and we started unloading. We had 500,000 gallons of aviation gasoline in 5-gallon cans.
Wow.
And we started offloading those gasoline cans into this little boat. And they decided that the ground swell of the ocean was such that the two ships were beating themselves to death, slamming together.
Yeah, I understand.
So they battened up the hatches and set sail for Casablanca. We were going to go into Casablanca to unload the ammunition and bombs and the rest of the gasoline in Casablanca. But on the way to Casablanca, we were torpedoed. And we floated around there a little bit. I got off from our ship onto a destroyer. I stepped from the rail to the deck of the destroyer. and we were that close to sinking, but the ship, the AKA-21, did not sink.
No.
It came within about 4 feet of sinking, but they were able to pump it out and tow it ashore, and it was beached, and we went back aboard the ship, and then unloaded all that munitions and stuff that was not damaged in the torpedo strike.
So it's quite special that the ship didn't explode with all the gasoline in it and all the ammunition in it, and a torpedo hit it and it still didn't went up in the air.
Yeah, there were 5 holes on the ship. Three of the holes were forward of the superstructure, and 2 of them were aft. And the big hole was right in front of the control bridge of the ship, and that's where the torpedo hit, in that big hole.
Oh, okay.
And at that time, in the hold, there were several layers of machine gun ammunition in boxes.
Yes.
And under that was several hundred tons of airport landing mat steel. There were steel plates that could hook together.
Yes.
And they can make a runway out of them.
Yeah.
That's where the torpedo hit.
So.
And so I think those steel airport landing mat absorbed most of the explosion of the torpedo. Of course, the quarters for the men on that starboard side of the ship,
yeah,
where the men were bunking, that was the torpedo was underneath that, so a lot of that explosion came right up through the quarters. Well, we were lucky that only one man got hurt, and he got hurt because the sliding door to the hold on that side of the ship hit him, blew off and hit him on the head. And
wow.
But he wasn't one of my men. He was from the 41st Infantry, and they were a coordinating party, I guess. There was a lieutenant, striker, and 2 enlisted men.
Okay. Okay.
And then the rest of the Army men were my boys, my platoon of about 40 men.
Okay. And North Africa, what do you recall about North Africa, about some missions? What was the main task at the time?
The day we got torpedoed, one of the ensigns came into the quarters where I was sleeping and woke me up. And he said to me, he says, "Get up and get your men up." He says, "We're underway. We're going towards Casablanca at 10 lots."
Yeah.
And he says, "I can't miss us." And sure enough, before we got very far, we got hit by that torpedo.
Yeah.
And but they managed to tow the ship and beach it just outside the port of Casablanca. And we went back aboard and unloaded the ship. And that was early November when we landed there, and it was sometime in early December that we finally got done unloading the ship and were trucked up to Port Leote, where the company was, D Company was located. Now, they wondered what the heck had happened to us because we weren't. They had no word about where we were or what we were doing until we showed up in the company area. So I think we went from Port Leote in the spring from Rabat rather to Mostaganem in Algiers.
Okay, so Algiers was the next step here.
Yeah, next step. I think I can't remember now whether we loaded on railroad cars or whether we convoyed. I think we convoyed.
Okay. Algiers. Well, while I'm reading on the May the 20th, they did arrive at Algeria. They bivouacked at open hillsides, what became known as Rock Hill and Mosquito Hill. Do you recall?
Say that again.
When you went to Port-au-Pool, they
Port-au-Pool, that's on the Mediterranean, yeah.
Yeah. And they called two hills. They were open areas, and there were two hills around there, and they called Rock Hill and Mosquito Hill because of the mosquitoes.
Yeah. We were. I think we lived in tents there.
Yeah. And okay, I'm looking at the time. We are talking already 1 hour and 10 minutes from now. So maybe you're getting tired.
No, I'm sort of enjoying this conversation. Okay. It's amazing to me. Now I'm right here in Tunkhannock, PA, looking at my computer screen, and you're in what, Brussels?
Holland, this time.
Belgium?
No, I'm in Holland, in the Netherlands.
Oh, in the Netherlands, yeah. Talking, and we can see each other.
Yeah. That's modern times, Francis. How special is that?
I hope you're getting enough information out of this.
Francis, you've been wonderful. All the sharing of your information you have, maybe you think you don't recall so much, but when you start talking, the stories, they come out of your mind.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so you told me already lots of information, but I don't want to keep you busy too long. If you say, I'll manage, we can go on, but we also can make another appointment on Friday for a Skype session again, if you like.
Well, Friday is not, if you're talking about May the 5th, is not a good date.
Okay.
I have to go to the middle school here in Tunkhannock and talk about my World War II experiences.
Again. Again.
Yeah. Except I'll have a map that I have of the campaign in Europe.
Well, I have that map too. Give me 1 second, and you can tell me if that is the same.
Yes, that one.
Yeah. Well, I have an original one too. So.
Except I have mine. I had a guy here in town make a copy of it
Oh wow.
on hardboard,
Yeah.
and then I have the original map, my original map, framed, and I hanging in my bedroom.
Yes. So you can you can take the map with you to the high school.
I'll take that map with me to the school,
Yeah.
and that'll and tell my little story.
Yeah. So Francis, what would be a good day when we could Skype again
Uh,
at 2 p.m.
well, how about next week, the same time,
Next
same
week?
the 9th at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, that will be good. And yeah. And if we want to speak each other sooner, is that possible? Another day sooner?
Well, I have golf tomorrow, and I have maybe
Well, Francis, let's keep it on next Tuesday. That's good.
next Tuesday.
Yeah, same day as today, 1 week later. Same time, 2 p.m. at the afternoon.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, perfectly. Okay. Do you want to go on with this interview, or if you have, do you have time to go on with this interview?
Do I what?
Do you have time to go on with this interview, or should we
Yeah.
end? Or should we end now? You may say it.
I can do what we've been doing so far without any problem.
Yeah. Well, maybe for me, you're 98 years old, so I have to respect your age.
Well, I don't think I'm that old.
No. Okay.
I think about 65.
So you're looking at 65. So I'm quite young at 39 at the moment.
Yeah, I'm 65 until I start to mow my lawn, and then I feel like 99.
And when you are playing golf?
I'm in my 60s when I'm playing golf.
Okay.
I don't hit the ball very far, but I do have one thing that helps me a little bit. If I'm always in the fairway. I hit the ball straight.
Okay.
That way, it's a short walk.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, Francis, if you want to go on, the next phase that will be the Sicilian campaign.
Sicilian.
Yeah.
You know, I can't give you anything on the Sicilian campaign because I didn't go there.
Oh no, you're at I know because you were at Company D at that time.
We stayed at at Port-au-Pools or Mostaganem in Algiers.
Yeah.
Outside, it was only about what a half hour's drive to Oran.
Yeah, I know because
Less than that.
I know they only Company B and Company A were at the Sicilian campaign.
Yeah, A company went to Sicily, but I was in D company at that time.
Yeah. I still have to keep that in mind because I still have in mind you were in Company A, so that's why. So your next phase will be Normandy, if I'm correct. The next phase will be Normandy. And you departed at Titworth Barracks and on D-Day, if I'm correct.
Okay.
And Company D, the unit history tells me that Company D traveled with the 82nd Reconnaissance Battalion and Headquarters Company on the same boat at that time. And you arrived at the vicinity of Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer. Do you recall when where you landed at Omaha Beach?
Omaha Beach Red.
Yeah. Do you? What did you see when you arrived with your LSD at that moment? Did you see?
I was in Headquarters Company then.
Yeah.
And I was a reconnaissance officer for Headquarters Company.
Yeah.
I had a recon section which consisted of a jeep driver, myself,
and
a radio operator.
Yeah. And you, when you arrived at the red sector at Omaha Beach, did you see still some debris and everything from D-Day? Was it still a mess? Or did
no, they had surprisingly, they had the beach all cleaned up. And it was, D+3, I think. We went to ashore at Omaha Beach. They beached the LST right up on the shore, and we drove right off of it. They had a bulldozer there that pushed sand up to the ramp of the ship so that we could drive off without any problem. We drove right off and up on the
up onto on the hill.
On the hill, yeah.
Yeah. Do you recall somebody from, let's see, John Hoffman? Is that a name you recall?
Who?
John Hoffman.
Hoffman?
Yeah.
Hoffman?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think so.
He was killed by enemy artillery at the same time with Francis Bonnettibus and Private Raymond Larking from Company E on June 15. They were the first casualties of the 17th Engineers. But you weren't there, I guess. It doesn't mind if you don't recall, Francis.
Some of the officers in Headquarters Company, I don't really remember very well because I didn't associate with them. I was, at that time, associating more with D Company and those officers, and that was Grady Smith and Lockery, and I've forgotten now who the others were besides Lieutenant Christian was S3, and the battalion commander was Corral.
Yeah.
And that, I still haven't forgotten the name of the other recon officer who got killed in an ambush in Normandy, Lieutenant Januzzi.
Yeah.
But I was lucky.
Yeah.
I got into A Company and the 2nd Battalion of the 66th Armored Regiment and made my trek from Normandy to Belgium to Holland to Germany.
That was quite a tour, Francis. That was quite
We
a tour.
were at Baysweiler, Germany, when they sent us back to Belgium for the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah. Well, I have pictures. I have pictures for myself. They were taken of the 17th engineers at Baysweiler in Germany.
Baysweiler.
So maybe there's a chance you are on one of those pictures because we have quite a series of that area.
Oh, we spent quite a little bit of time there before Christmas. We were getting ready to jump off to take the city of Ruhr on Elbr. No, not the Elbe River.
The Ruhr River or the
Rhone River.
yeah, the Ruhr River.
Yeah. So then the German offensive started into Belgium, and we made a march from Baysweiler to Seine
Yes.
in one day.
Yes. And what do you recall from Holland? Did you met some people in Holland? Civilians?
No, I don't. I don't recall any. Our best friends over there are Rudy
Yeah, I know him.
and
And maybe go further next week on Tuesday.
yeah, that next Tuesday at about the same time we can do that.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a lot of information. It was 1 hour and 1.5 hours we spoke to each other. So the next time we go any further, we will discuss the Normandy campaign, the latest part, the Ardennes campaign, and maybe you do have some memories about the period in Berlin. Maybe we can talk about that.
I'll think about it.
Yeah, that will be wonderful. Francis, thank you very much for your information.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed this.
Okay, funny. And Francis, when I want to send you some information, what's the best way to do it? Should I send it to Susan, or can I send you an email, or should I put it on your Facebook?
Send me an email.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you send it to friend2@epix.net, I would get it.
Okay. Because we spoke about some things, and I have some extra information about where we talked about. I have some pictures, and I have also pictures of well, some of the names we discussed about. So I can send you some further information, and maybe you like that.
Yeah, or you can send it to me over the internet. I can copy it.
Yeah, wonderful.
Okay.
Francis, thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.
Okay.
Okay. Bye bye.
Enjoy.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.